We believe in a doctrine called dispensationalism. In other words, you got to rightly divide verses to the right group of people and right time period. So it is very important that you've got to do that. If you don't do that, then you're going to come up with wrong doctrine. Now, there's a heresy out there where they deny a rapture, or they will consider a rapture after the tribulation for Christians. So they call this a post-tribulation rapture. Now, I'm going to put this in parentheses. That way people don't get confused. We, as dispensationalists, believe that Christians will not go through the tribulation. Amen. And that we will be raptured before the tribulation. That's what we believe in. Now, the thing is this, is that a lot of people, they get deceived by wrong doctrine in this kind of teaching because they think that there are verses that talk about Christians going through the tribulation, a rapture after the tribulation. Thus, there must be a post-tribulation rapture, not pre-tribulation rapture. Now, here's the fatal flaw you're going to notice, the fatal flaw. That's why we believe in dispensationalism. Right group of people and right time period, okay? So they have proof texts like Matthew chapter 24. They've got the book of Job. They also got Mark 13, if I recall. Luke, probably 21. Whenever you look at these verses, it's impossible to not see the nation of Israel in it. Whenever you talk about a rapture, or focus on this one, this will be even more clear right here, all right? Focus on this word right here. Tribulation, and when I mean by this tribulation, I mean end times tribulation. Not a regular tribulation, a regular hardship and trial, all right? Because everyone goes through that. When you look at end times tribulation, you know what you're going to find all the time who's connected? Jew. Matthew 24, it says, they which be in Judea. It says, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place, the Sabbath. You're going to find out that the apostles and the ministry of Jesus Christ was to what? The house of Israel. You're going to find Revelation 7, tribulation well underway. Revelation 7, what? 12 tribes of Israel. It actually said that, 12 tribes of Israel. Revelation chapter 7. Not only that, the greatest evidence is your Old Testament, which is larger than your New Testament. That is filled with end time stuff, right? You know what it's going to be always connected to that? Israel, Jew. So you see, that's why this whole thing about the saints who go through the tribulation. So who are the saints that go through the tribulation? It's not this. It's not the church. It's not the Christian. It's these people, the Jews. And the wealth of evidence is all the verses where a Jew is always connected. But when you look at the church about the tribulation, and I mean specifically to the church, specifically addressed to the church, Paul's epistles were all directed to the church, right? Paul says to the church of Ephesus, to the church of Galatia, to the church of so-and-so. And when he was writing to these churches, Paul, he never mentioned about preparing for the mark of the beast, right. 666. He instead talked about a rapture for Christians. And he only talked about today's age, what we're going through, and how you should live for Jesus Christ. So thus we call it church age. He never talked about this, about Christians going through this, what they're supposed to prepare for. The only proof text that you can use, is 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. But you know what the flaw with this one is? This, even though it talks about the Antichrist and tribulation, Paul directed the tribulation to a different group of people. He says they, he, other people. And then he contrasts that starting from verse 13, but we are what? You keep reading that verse onward. Called to glory and to be in comfort. What is that? That's a rapture. Called to glory. The book of Colossians, going to heaven. Comfort. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, which is he's speaking to the same group of people. The rapture. So you see, in the same proof text, he distinguishes us from these. So you notice right here, there is nothing in reference to the Christian church. Not only that, if you look at Revelation chapter 1 through 3, which your hand is in it, Revelation 1 through 3, you have all this addressed to the church, the church, the church, the church. But then what happens when you look at Revelation chapter 4 through 5? It's up in heaven. They're up in heaven. So you see these Christian saints up in heaven. Ooh, I wonder why. And then you see what? Chapter 6 and onward, all the way. So all the way to the end of the tribulation, which is 19 from memory. All the way to onward, whereas the church is not mentioned at all. Not even one time. They are nowhere mentioned. Why? Because the church, but it's strange. Why is it these guys aren't mentioned, but these guys are mentioned in chapter 7? See, that's why it's proof right here that this going through the tribulation is going to be applied to the nation of Israel. Whereas for Christians, it's not for us. I'm not going to go through it on this video because I've already covered it in other videos, but in case some people don't know, if you look at the Old Testament, he calls this all the time Jacob's trouble, his people's trouble. You got to understand this. Why did God even have a tribulation event, huh? Yeah. He could have just neglected this. He could have neglected this, have the rapture happen, we go through the millennium. You know why he has to have this? It's for his nation of Israel.
That's right.
He had a purpose. If you read the whole Old Testament, it's all aimed for them. Because their nation has to go through a cleansing. Yeah. Their nation has to be judged. God's not done with that. Yeah. Boy, they had it rough, didn't they? They had it rough, but God's not done with them. So they're going to go through the tribulation. Daniel chapter 9 is greatest evidence. He says 70 weeks are determined upon thy people. The 70th week, which is the tribulation, is determined upon thy people, thy holy city. It's for the Jews. So you see, this is the greatest evidence. So the thing is that people are mistaking. They're saying, show me where it says a rapture before the tribulation. That's not how we come up with that. All right? How we come up with this is this. Show me a verse where there is no tribulation in that rapture. That's where we come in, see? That's what we believe. Christians are not going through the end time tribulation. We're getting raptured. It's not even this one too, post-trib rapture. That's not what it is. It's what? People going through the tribulation and they experience a rapture. So you've got to understand this is how we come up with pre-tribulation rapture, post-tribulation rapture doctrine is simple. It's not because of we base it off on before or after. If you base it only on that one, that's quite little evidence you're going to use for the scriptures. All right, you don't want to base it off of 2 or 3 that may have said after. What you want to base it on is all the scriptures. And when you look at all the scripture with scripture, and there are tons of scriptures proving what? Christians are not in the tribulation, Jews are in the tribulation. There's your evidence right there. So thus, we believe Christians are not going through the tribulation. We get raptured instead. The tribulation is reserved for the nation of Israel when they go through their time. Why? Because God reserved it for that nation. They have to go through their time period, His judgment. So this is the evidence right here of a pre-tribulation rapture.